Monster waves are back, and they're not waiting for a dramatic stormy sky or howling wind to make their entrance. These aren't your average beach breakers. They're massive, silent, and suddenly they're right there, out of nowhere, smashing the shoreline like they own it. A new storm system deep in the Pacific Ocean has kicked off another round of long-period swell waves, the kind of waves that travel thousands of miles undetected before hammering.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
The U.S. West Coast. And this isn't just about some tall waves looking good for surfers. These things are dangerous, destructive, and very, very misunderstood. So here's the deal. Long-period waves, sometimes called monster waves, are wind-driven, not caused by earthquakes like tsunamis, but their impact can be just as deadly. And what makes them uniquely terrifying is that they can show up in completely calm weather. No wind, no rain, just sudden surges of powerful water barreling toward an unsuspecting shore. The danger right now is real, and it's growing fast. Forecasters are warning that this particular swell, triggered by a storm system in the central Pacific, is packing serious energy. It's expected to strike the coastline within 48 to 72 hours, but its effects are already being felt. Coastal communities up and down the west coast are bracing for impact. Beaches are closing. Harbor access is restricted. And authorities are basically saying, if you're near the ocean, don't be. The science behind these waves is as intense as their impact. Here's the part most people miss. It's not about how tall the wave is. It's about how long it takes between wave crests. That's called the wave period. And when that period climbs above 14 seconds, things get ugly, fast. Longer period waves carry way more energy. They travel deeper through the water column and hit the shore with more force. Even if they don't look massive offshore, by the time they reach shallow water, they grow taller and crash harder. The longer the period, the more energy builds. It's physics, and it's brutal. Now, when these high-energy waves line up with high tide, that's when the situation turns from serious to catastrophic. That exact overlap is what coastal engineers and emergency crews fear most. Because that's when even reinforced seawalls start to buckle. That's when roads near the cliffs crumble. That's when floodwaters creep into homes that normally sit high and dry. And this storm-driven swell is forecast to hit right in sync with peak tides, supercharging its destructive power. It's already happening. Cliffs are eroding. Beaches are vanishing. Infrastructure is showing visible cracks and damage. Each new wave event chips away at defenses that are barely holding on. Some of these walls and barriers were weakened during previous swells, and now they're being hit again, harder. The damage is piling up, and the coast is running out of time and space. This isn't some freak incident either. These long-period swells have been coming more often, one event after another, with barely a break in between. That means there's no time for repairs, no time for reinforcement. Each wave surge leaves everything weaker than before, and the next one just picks up where the last left off. And if you're thinking, well, at least it's not a tsunami, think again. That's part of the problem. People don't think of these as deadly because they don't come with sirens or seismic alerts. They don't look scary from the beach until they're already slamming into it. The public gets confused, and officials are left trying to explain why sunny skies don't mean safe waters. Because yes, these waves arrive with no warning signs most people recognize. That's why emergency services are being proactive, closing off public access, restricting navigation routes, and warning people to stay away even if the day looks beautiful. Behind the scenes, this is a full-on high-tech monitoring operation. NOAA and other agencies are using satellites, wave buoys, and predictive models to track every detail of the swell's movement. They know the source of this energy is thousands of miles away, in a storm system spinning in the central Pacific. That storm's wind field, also known as the fetch, is funneling energy straight toward the west coast like a sniper scope. And because the storm is still active, the waves haven't stopped forming. More energy is on the way. What starts as a pulse becomes a relentless onslaught. When the first wave event hits, the ground takes a hit. Then comes another, and another. And while each one might not look devastating on its own, the accumulated effect is coastal attrition in real time. Soil gets washed away. Foundations weaken. Roads near the edge start collapsing. The coastline changes shape, and not in a poetic way. Emergency response teams are working around the clock. They're inspecting vulnerable infrastructure, reinforcing what they can, and relying heavily on real-time data to guide their decisions. And while the focus is on protecting lives and property right now, there's a bigger picture emerging, and it's not good. These long-period swells aren't just popping up randomly. There's a growing belief that climate patterns are shifting, and the storms that generate these waves are getting stronger and more frequent. If that's true, coastal communities are in for a tough future. Seawalls and sandbags aren't going to cut it when you're being hit with wave events that look more like the ocean's version of a battering ram. That means it's not just about emergency alerts anymore. It's about public education. People need to understand what these waves are, why they're so dangerous, and why a calm beach might be the most deceptive threat of all. And let's be honest, when it comes to awareness, we're not there yet. Too many people still ignore the signs. They climb over barriers to get a better photo. They walk out on jetties during peak swell. They treat nature like it's a backdrop for Instagram, and not a force that can literally sweep you away. So here we are again. Monster waves are back. Not with fanfare or flashing lights, but with quiet, creeping power that builds offshore and hits like a freight train. And we're watching again as the coast braces for impact. This isn't a drill. It's not a viral moment or a once-in-a-decade phenomenon. It's happening more often. It's getting more dangerous. And it's forcing cities and states to rethink what coastal safety even means. Longer period waves mean deeper erosion, stronger impact, and higher risk, especially when timed with tides. And right now, the tide and the swell are in sync. That's a worst-case scenario. So if you're near the coast, take the warnings seriously. Don't rely on what the weather looks like. Don't assume flat water means safe conditions. And absolutely don't underestimate what these waves can do. This isn't fear-mongering. It's just the reality of wave physics, unfolding right in front of us. If you've been watching the damage stack up over the last few years, you know this isn't a fluke. The ocean is changing how it delivers its punches, and the coastline's running out of defenses to block them. Stay safe, stay smart, and most importantly, pay attention. If you've made it this far, you probably care about what's happening not just at the surface level, but the mechanics behind the chaos. So let's keep the conversation going. Hit that like button if you learned something new. Drop a comment with your take or what you're seeing in your area. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next wave of wild, real-world drama hitting the coast. Because the waves may be silent when they travel, but the fallout is loud. You'd think we'd have learned by now. But every time one of these long-period swells shows up, it's the same chaos. The warning signs are there, the forecasts are clear, but people still stroll out to the edge like it's just another photo op. Spoiler: the ocean doesn't care if you brought your camera. This latest swell is especially nasty, not just because of its sheer force, but because it's part of a pattern. These waves don't happen in isolation. They're part of a chain reaction that starts way out in the Pacific. A storm builds, winds rage, and that energy doesn't just vanish. It travels, quietly, relentlessly, until it arrives here. And when it does, it hits places that seem safe. Places you'd take your family on a sunny afternoon. Beaches, piers, harbor walkways. It's that disconnect between calm appearances and brutal reality that makes these events so dangerous. Here's something that should stop you in your tracks. The height of these waves is not the most important part. It's the wave period. That's the time between one crest and the next. The longer the period, the more energy is packed into each wave. And when you get into periods of 14 seconds or more, you're dealing with water masses that act less like playful surf and more like hydraulic battering rams. These aren't little splashes. They're deep, intense surges that push farther inland, slam higher against walls, and drag more debris back into the ocean. They're built to destroy. And the timing couldn't be worse. The swell is hitting during high tide, which is pretty much the coastal equivalent of pouring gasoline on a fire. High tide lifts the baseline water level, so by the time the wave energy arrives, there's nowhere else for that water to go except over barriers, across roads, and into people's living rooms. Erosion is no longer a slow process you read about in textbooks. It's a fast, violent breakdown of cliffs, dunes, and everything built too close to the edge. Once those structures are compromised, the repair costs skyrocket. And the worst part, some of the damage can't be fixed. You lose land forever. It just disappears. And all of this is happening while skies are clear. That's the kicker. No rain, no lightning, no apocalyptic cloud cover. Just a typical coastal day with an ocean that suddenly turns into an engine of destruction. People don't expect devastation without a dramatic weather event. But that's exactly when these waves strike. And it's not just nature taking a hit. Infrastructure is getting hammered too. Seawalls that were built to last decades are cracking after just a few wave cycles. Roads built along the coast are washing out in sections. Foundations near cliffs are being undermined, inch by inch. It's not just dramatic, it's expensive. And in many cases, irreversible. You want numbers? Here's one. In the last few swell events, communities up and down the coast have had to fork out millions just to temporarily stabilize vulnerable spots. Not to fix them, just to keep them from collapsing completely. And with this new swell system rolling in, those stopgap measures are being put to the test. Harbors are also on high alert. These waves make entering and exiting ports extremely risky. Boats capsize. Docks get ripped apart. Navigation becomes a nightmare. That's why authorities are locking down harbor entrances. Not because they want to inconvenience anyone, but because the risk of something going catastrophically wrong is just too high. And let's not ignore how this affects marine operations. Commercial fishing, coastal shipping, even basic tourism all take a hit. You can't just wait it out when the waves come in sets over multiple days, and the energy lingers. And we're not talking about pretty sets for surfing. These are chaotic, and predictable, and capable of destroying gear or pulling people straight into the water. The coordination behind the scenes is intense. Emergency crews are working with real-time sensor data buoys out at sea, tide gauges, satellite feeds, all trying to anticipate how bad it's going to get and when. Every hour matters. Because when one of these long-period waves hits a weakened structure at high tide, it's over. This isn't fear for fear's sake. This is a very real, very immediate crisis playing out on the edge of the continent. And if you're wondering why it feels like this is happening more lately, you're not alone. The frequency of these swell events is going up. Whether it's due to climate shifts, stronger storms out at sea, or changes in jet stream behavior, the result is the same: more energy hitting the coast, more often. Which brings us to the bigger issue: preparedness. A lot of coastal towns were never designed with this kind of repeated battering in mind. Their defenses were built for rare events, not monthly beatdowns. And now, those defenses are cracking. In some places, literally falling into the ocean. Upgrading infrastructure costs money. A lot of it. And most local governments are caught between patchwork repairs and full-scale overhauls they can't afford. Meanwhile, residents are left wondering if their beachfront properties will still exist next year. And while that sounds dramatic, it's not. It's already happening. Properties once considered prime real estate are now one wave event away from being uninhabitable. Insurance companies are pulling back. Real estate values are shifting. The ground is moving, figuratively and literally. You want the most unsettling part. Even if you're not right on the coast, you're not totally in the clear. Roads that connect inland towns to coastal hubs can wash out. Power lines near cliffs can fall. Storm drains and sewer systems get overwhelmed when floodwaters rush in. The ripple effects from coastal damage go far beyond the beach. That's why the conversation can't just be about emergency response. It has to be about long-term planning. Cities need adaptive infrastructure, better early warning systems, smarter building codes, and clearer public communication. Because as these swell events keep coming, they're not giving communities time to catch up. The silver lining, if you can call it that, is that the science has improved dramatically. We can now model swells days in advance. We know what kind of storm out in the Pacific will send energy this way. We can track the fetch, the wind speeds, the angle of approach. But even with all that data, the waves don't negotiate. They just arrive. And we either prepare or pay the price. And right now, we're paying. So if you're on the coast or have friends, family, or plans near it, this is your heads up. Respect the warnings. Don't cross barricades. Don't get close for a quick pic. Don't assume a calm ocean means a safe one. This isn't alarmism. It's reality. And the sooner we start treating these long-period swells with the seriousness they deserve, the better chance we have of minimizing the damage. Because here's the truth. The waves aren't going to stop. They're going to keep coming. Quietly. Relentlessly. And whether it's this week, next month, or next season, they'll be back stronger, faster, and with more power packed into every set. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it does. Because here's something most people aren't talking about: what happens after the swell passes. Sure, the monster waves crash, flood, and erode, and eventually, the ocean settles down again. The sun comes out. The tide recedes. People go back to their routines. But the damage, it lingers. Every time a long-period wave event hits the coast, it leaves the shoreline weaker than it found it. Even if the cliffs are still standing and the seawalls haven't fully collapsed, the structural integrity has taken a hit. Maybe a support beam shifts. Maybe a chunk of road gets undermined. Maybe the sand that once protected a neighborhood is just gone. These aren't one-and-done disasters. They're cumulative. That's the word experts keep using: cumulative damage. Because each swell doesn't just hurt you once. It sets the stage for the next one to hit harder, cut deeper, and break more. It's like getting punched in the same spot over and over. Eventually, something gives. And here's the brutal irony: when things look normal again, that's often when the risk is highest. People return. Contractors patch over visible cracks. Tourists head back to the boardwalk like nothing happened. But underneath the surface, literally and figuratively, the situation is fragile. One more big wave. One more high tide. That's all it could take to push a weakened bluff over the edge, or flood a low-lying neighborhood for good. And let's be honest, these areas aren't just rich beachfront homes and tourist spots. Real people live there. Working families. Coastal towns that rely on seasonal business. You're not just talking about waves destroying property, you're talking about entire communities being slowly erased from the map. We're watching that happen in real time. And this is why the messaging matters so much. Because the waves themselves don't look like what people expect danger to look like. There's no howling wind or black skies. Just clear, sunny calm, and then a surge that knocks people off their feet. Or sends logs flying across the beach. Or sucks someone off a jetty so fast they're gone before anyone can react. You don't have time to learn your lesson when you're already in the water. And honestly, the ocean isn't doing anything new. It's just doing what it's always done: move energy around. It's the way we've built along its edges, the way we've underestimated it, that's catching up to us. Long-period swell events aren't going away. If anything, they're becoming part of the new normal. And that means the way we respond has to change. Not just with emergency tape and news reports, but with real infrastructure change. With smarter planning. With the humility to understand that you can't fight the ocean, you can only prepare for it. So yeah, the waves will settle. The sun will shine again. But the scars, they stay. And if you've stuck with this story, you get why that matters. You see how deep this goes beyond water, beyond physics, into policy, planning, and survival. These aren't just natural events. They're stress tests for everything we've built. So what do you think? Have you seen this kind of damage in your own city or beach town? Drop your stories in the comments. We want to hear from the people living through it. Hit the like button if this helped you understand why these waves are more than just weather. And don't forget to subscribe. We're breaking down the real disasters behind the headlines, one meltdown at a time.